Quick Spares is a good exercise, it's a good revision exercise, and it is also a good integration exercise to go through. It tests IAS 16 combined with IAS 1 combined with companies. Like you see, it counted 35 marks. I think it was an old exam question that we've used. So here is just an example of how do we integrate certain subjects and only ask you one question where we actually test a lot of things that you've done in this semester. I'm not going to do the IAS 16 note part because I've done more than enough of those. Although in the Excel memo that you're going to receive on Ifundi, you will see the solution and the memo on that part of the question, as well as the IAS 1 question. I think I also covered that quite extensively. But in the memo, you will find the suggested solution for that part of the question. The only part of the question that I'm going to do is the A part of the question, where they ask you to calculate the number and rand value of ordinary shares in issue as of 31 March 2016. So Quick Spare Parts was incorporated on 1 February. The company's financial year end is 31 March. QSP buys and sells spare parts that are used in the automotive industry. The company's turnover did not exceed the threshold as per the regulations of the VAT Act for several years, but as from the 2014 financial year, the entity grew from strength to strength, and the turnover for the 12th month exceeded the 1 million rand threshold, and QSP became a registered VAT vendor. Watch out for something like that in a question, because my dear friend who's involved likes to have a date when this company becomes registered for VAT, and then she asks, usually she combines somewhere in the question, an asset that was purchased before they become a VAT vendor. So that asset I would have capitalized the VAT for, and thereafter, obviously, I will claim the VAT. But I could not claim the VAT if I wasn't registered for VAT. So just watch out when you see a lot of dates, since what date a company was registered for VAT. Okay, share capital, authorized share capital, 380,000 no par value ordinary shares and 50,000 10% non-cumulative convertible preference shares with no par value. The part of the question that I'm going to do is only the A part of the question, which wants you to calculate the number and the rand value of ordinary shares in issue as at 31 March. Guys, this B and C part of the questions, very good exercise in preparation for tests and exams. Good. So, issued share capital. The following shares were issued during the following financial years, and they only request ordinary share capital from us. So, we would start with a little table where you will have a date and the nature of the transaction and the number of shares and the rand value of the shares. So we start with 75,000 shares on the 1st of February, and that amounted to 1125,000. So number of shares, 1 February, 75,000, 1125,000. Then 120,000 order shares were offered to the public on 1 June at 20 Rand per share. 95,000 of the shares were taken up by members of the public, and the shares issue was underwritten by Gupta Bank at a commission payable of 5%. So that means that 120,000 shares would have been taken up at 20 Rand a share. And importantly is this sentence: QSP write-off share issue costs according to the accounting policy in the applicable capital account against the proceeds received from shares issued. Good. So there were underwriters commission of 5%. Undertaker is something else. 5% of the value of the shares that was issued. So 120,000 shares at 20 Rand a share is 2.4 million, and the share issue cost the underwriters commission of 5% would have been offset against the proceeds, but not against the 2.4 million, just against the share capital account, but as a separate line item. Then on 30 June 2014, a bonus issue took place and all shareholders received 1 ordinary share for every 2 shares held on 30 June 2014. Did the shareholders pay anything for these shares? No. Did we attach a value to any of these shares? No. So what did we do? We just issued more share certificates. How many? Well, we've issued one ordinary share certificate for every 2 shares held on 30 June 2014. So at that stage, we had 195,000 shares in issue. 1 share for every 2 held, so divided by 2 multiplied by 1 means that we have issued an additional 97,500 share certificates, but there was no value attached to that. So therefore, they just received more share certificates. So the total number of shares, we also call that a share split, guys. If the value of your shares are getting too big, then they split it and they make it more shares, but there's no additional value. What does it mean if there's more shares on offer on the stock exchange? It will mean that your share price is going to drop. But the total value, if your share price per share is going to drop, but you have more shares that you can trade with, you should not be worse off. So then we had 292,000, that was at the zero value, so the total rand value at that stage, 1 March 2015, was 3405,000. There were 25,000 convertible shares in issue at 30 September 2012 at 80 Rand per share. And that then gave us a total of 2 million Rand in pref share capital, 25,000 times 80. And then there was 15,000 that we issued at 90 Rand a share on 1 March 2015. Now, although they don't ask me the preference shareholders, preference shares are probably going to use that at some stage. So share issue transactions for the year ended 31 March 2016. 20,000 10% convertible preference shares were converted into ordinary shares. So I need to know how many convertible shares there were. Into ordinary shares on 1 December 2015 at a conversion price of 25 Rand per share. All 20,000 converted shares were issued on 30 September 2012. So it all came out of that issue. And they say that 20,000 of that 25,000 shares were converted. So if we have then 20 divided by 25,000 multiplied by 2 million, which was the value of that share issue. I think I've got too many. See guys, that also happens with you if you don't put your zeros properly in a test, then you start dropping off zeros or adding zeros, and that is when all the problem starts. That gives us 1.6 million Rand. So that was the value of the shares that were converted. Now, the conversion price was 25 Rand a share. So that we're going to divide by 25, and that gives you then 64,000 ordinary shares. 64,000 ordinary shares, total value 1.6 million Rand. This prospectus was issued to the public on 1 November 2015 to issue the remaining ordinary shares at a price of 30 Rand per share. Gupta Bank was the underwriter and the commission of 7.5% was due. It got quite expensive. A total of 40,000 applications for ordinary shares were received by 27 November and the shares were allotted on 30 November 2015. Unsuccessful applicants were notified on 5 December and refunds were made on the same date. Now, here we have to see and work out what is the available shares. We are only authorized to issue 380,000 ordinary shares. So at this stage, we have already issued 292,500 plus 64,000. 292,500 plus 64,000 gives us a total of 356,500 shares. we can only issue a maximum of 380,000 shares. So therefore, the maximum that we were allowed to issue now was 23,500 Rand a share. The share issue price was 30 Rand a share. So that times 30 Rand gives us then a total of, let me just get this message out of the way, 705,000 Rand. 23,500 times 30, 705,000. And then there was 7.5% underwriters commission applicable on the share issue. So 705,000 times 7.5% gives us 52,875. So the number of shares issued by the end of the year was 380,000 ordinary shares. The Rand value of those shares was the 5,657,125. Now I refer you back to one of the examples that I've done, and I actually indicated that on Ifundi disclosure, where we have disclosed the shares and the equity in the statement of financial position and the notes thereto. You know that in the notes, you have to show the movement of the shares in numbers, the number of shares. How much was the number of shares issued at the beginning of the year? What happened with those number of shares during the course of the year? So very much the same as what we've done here. You have to disclose by ways of a note in your statement of financial position for each and every class of share. Only the numbers, the Rand values of those shares, that is disclosed in the statement of changes in equity. So please have a look, go back to Ifundi, have a look. It's one of those questions that is under during the contact session, and I've indicated clearly good disclosure requirements or disclosure requirements. Please have a look at that for your own benefit.